إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى أهله ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We give praise and thanks to Almighty Allah. We ask Him to shower His blessing upon the noblest of mankind, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who have stood, are standing, and will come to stand on this path of Sirat al-Mustaqim. Alhamdulillah, we have not ceased to be treating the book Az-zakaat fi-l-Islaam, fi-Dh-Dhawi-l-Kitaab, was-Sunnah, Az-zakaat fi-l-Islaam, fi-Dh-Dhawi-l-Kitaab, was-Sunnah. And Alhamdulillah, we have gotten to the part on Az-zakaat on al-kharij min al-ard, zakah on those things that are extracted from the earth. We got to the end of that, and at the end of that is zakah al-asal, al-mahmi, wal al-muttakhadh li-tijara. The scholars have a difference of opinion with respect to paying zakah on honey. We are treating, this section that we're treating is with farm produce. And we said that the produce that there's ijma' of the scholars on that we are to pay zakah on are four. Two of them are seed-like, two of them are fruit-like. The seed-like one are wheat and barley. The fruit-like ones are dates and raisins, that is dried up grapes. So these are the four that is ijma' of the scholars on that we are to pay zakah on. Anything other than these, you'll find that some of the scholars say we should pay zakah on them. Some of the scholars say we should not pay, that there's no zakah on them, that there's no text that says we should pay zakah on them. There's ijma' on these four because these are the four that the Prophet ﷺ collected zakah on. And those of the scholars who ask that we pay more than the on other types of produce, they extrapolate from the hadith that talk about paying on farm produce. But those who restricted to this use the hadith of what the Prophet ﷺ collected during his lifetime. And Allahu A'lam, that is a stronger position. Now, out of these difference of opinions comes honey. Are we to pay zakah on honey or not? People people farm honey. They collect honey bees, house them, and they collect their honey and sell it. So is this honey zakatable? This honey, general honey that is produced in someone's farm, and also honey that is produced in a place that is conceded out to that person by the Muslim government. So there's one that you produce, honey that you produce in a farm that you own or that you rented. There's also honey that you produce in a land that you got as a concession from the Muslim government. Is there zakah on these? Some of the scholars say that there's zakah on honey, whatever the source is. Some of the scholars say that there's zakah on honey if it is produced on land that you got as a concession from the Muslim government, i.e., that you can use for a purpose so long as you meet certain terms. Now, so that is what this topic is about. Now, they also talk about honey when you are selling the honey. Of course, when you're selling the honey, that is litijara, then it becomes a trade good, like any other trade good. Once anything is being offered for sale, then it is to be, documented. The value of that thing be put together with the value of every other thing that one is selling. After one howl has been completed, one lunar year, and one gives zakah based on that, if it is up to the nisab or above the nisab. If it is not up to the nisab or above the nisab, it is to be added to what one has in store of gold or silver. So if in addition to gold it meets the nisab or exceed the nisab, or if in addition these trade goods in addition to silver meet or exceed the nisab, then one is to pay zakah. One adds them together because they are of the same genre, like we say. So you sell, let's say, your honey, your shoes, your clothes in order to get currency. And the basic currency in Islam is gold or silver. So that is why you add your trade goods to your gold, or you add your trade goods to your silver. Now, so if it is rodo tijara, there's zakah on it, and the zakah to be paid on it is 2.5%, rubul ushur, a quarter of 10%. So this is 2.5% that one will pay. So if it is al-asal al-mahmi, asal, honey that is produced on land that is concessioned out to someone, the person benefiting from the farm, from the land, then we have a hadith. This is the hadith of Amr ibn Shu'ayb, an abihi, from his father, an jiddihi, from his grandfather. So this is the line of people of the deen and people of knowledge. Qala, he said, Ja'a Hilal. He said, Hilal, radiyallahu anhu, came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ahadu Bani Mut'an. He was from the people of Banu Mut'an. Ila Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Hilal, bi ushur al-nahl lahu, with a pack of honey that he had with him, the comb of honey that he had with him. وَكَانَ سَأَلَهُ أَنْ يَحْمِيَ لَهُ وَادِيًا يُقَالُ لَهُ سَلَبَةً. Then he requested from the Prophet ﷺ that he should concession out for him a valley that is called Salaba. So that is, the Prophet ﷺ should give it not as a gift, but should allow him the use of it. And by concessioning out to him, it means that nobody else will have access to it, but it will be on terms. فَحَمَلَهُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ ذَلِكَ الْوَادِي. The Prophet ﷺ concessioned out that Wadi Salaba, to Hilal. فَلَمَا وَالِيَ. But the terms here have not been mentioned, but they were in this narration of the hadith. It's not yet mentioned, but it was mentioned at that time. But we'll get to it as we read down the hadith. فَلَمَّا وَالِيَ عُمَرْ بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه. When Umar ibn al-Khattab became the Khalif after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, كتب له سفيان ibn Wahib. Sufyan ibn Wahib wrote to Umar ibn al-Khattab, the Khalifa. He wrote to him, إلى Umar ibn al-Khattab, يسأله عن ذلك. He asked Umar ibn al-Khattab about this arrangement that existed between the Prophet ﷺ and Hilal. فكتب عمر رضي الله عنه. Umar ibn al-Khattab رضي الله عنه wrote back and said, إن أدى إليك ما كان يؤدي إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. You be in charge of that province. If Hilal pays to you what he used to pay to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam min ushur al-nahl, from the honeycombs, fahmi lahu salaba, then continue to concession out to him the valley of salaba. Wa illa, and if he doesn't, fa innama huwa dhubabu ghaythin, then ya'kuluhu ma yasha. Then the honeybees, if he doesn't pay to you what he used to pay to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in return for that concession, then the honey that is produced there and the bees that produce the honey there are like, any other family of, flies. The bees are categorized like, flies in the Arabic language. Then they are like dhubab. They're like any other fly that produces something. Gubab al-ghayth. So their ghayth is rain. So when rain falls, it nurtures the plants that produce flowers, and the bees, suck from these, flowers to produce honey. So they are like any other, flies like this that will do similar work. So they produce the product of the honey, of the honeybee, which is the honey, is available for anybody to consume. So anybody, if it doesn't pay you, anybody that gets to Salaba can utilize the honey, can consume the honey, meaning the concession granted him is off if he stops paying what he should pay. And the arrangement he had with the Prophet ﷺ was that he said, min kulli ashar qurbin, min kulli ashari qurbin qurbatun. So from every vessel, from every 10 vessel of honey that was generated from as-salaba, Hilal offered to give one. So that is 10% to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ accepted that from him. Now, this hadith is what caused a difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Some of the scholars of the opinion that this is zakah on honey. They said that this is zakah on honey, 10%. Al-Ushur. Out of every 10 vessels produced, one vessel will go in zakah. However, this, Allahu A'lam, is not the case according to the more correct opinion of the scholars. As the Sheikh Rahimahullah said, this hadith, mahmul, is rather to be understood ala anna akhda al-ushru min al-asal fi muqabil al-hima kama yadulu alayhi kitab Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. That what is to be understood from this hadith is that the 10% that Hilal was paying to the Prophet ﷺ was a fee for being able to have access, restricted access, or rather reserved access to a salaba, so that nobody else would use it, while the piece of land, that valley, is concession to him. So it's a fee, it's like a rental fee that he paid. إلا إذا كان العسل من عروض التجارة, except if that honey is for عروض التجارة. So for instance, that will mean that if Hilal, apart from the 10% he was paying as rental fee for the valley, if he was selling the honey that he was producing there, then that honey will not be regarded as urud al-tijara. So we'll pay 2.5% on that. In addition, on the honey, the 10% that he was paying, the 10% honey that he was paying, or the 10% of the honey that he produced that he was paying, was for the land, access to the land. So it will not be any different from if somebody went to rent a land from someone and said, rather than paying you in cash, I'll pay you in honey. So if this person is a Muslim and he was selling the honey, then he will still pay zakah on that honey. The arrangement of paying 10% of what he produces of honey to the owner of the land as rent is different from the 2.5% that he will pay to the Bayt al-Mal, to the zakat institution as zakah. The two different things to two different authorities. So even when the authority is the same now, the fact that there are two different things is not, removed. Now, so with that we end the part on farm produce. We entered into the discourse on urud al-tijara, the zakah on urud al-tijara, the zakah on al-mustakhraj min al-ard, al-kharij min al-ard, the things that are taken out from the earth. So the first thing that we took there was farm produce. And we learned that in farm produce, we do not wait for one howl. It is whenever the crop that we grow produces whatever it is that it will produce. So if it is every 3 months, if it is every 6 months, if it is every year, if it is every 2 years, or anything like that, once the produce come out, then that is when we pay zakah on it. And that is when we pay zakah on it. Qur'atu haqqahu yawma hasadi, and pay the rights on it on the day that it is harvested. We said this hadith initially was revealed before the institution of zakah. So it meant that people should give sadaqah, compulsory sadaqah from their farm produce. Then when zakah became revealed, the first implication, the first meaning was not abrogated. You still give something to the people from that. It's like what the Prophet ﷺ said with respect to the mashia, the bahimat al-an'am, when you take them to the water and the masakin are there and you milk them, you milk them and you give the masakin out of that. So the same thing, here also. But in addition to that, after zakat become instituted, then we'll pay zakat on it. If it was watered by natural means, then we'll pay 10%. If it was watered by human effort, then we'll pay 5% on that. One of the topics, Allahu A'lam, that the great Sheikh did not mention here is, do we deduct things, expenditure on the farm? No, we do not. The more correct opinion of the scholars is that we do not deduct expenditure on the farm. Any expenditure we do not deduct from it. Like, for instance, your cost of irrigating the farm. No, what the Prophet ﷺ said is, if you irrigate the farm through human efforts or through your efforts, your expenditure, you are to pay 5%. He didn't say you should deduct your expenses of irrigation. No, just pay 5%. Just pay 5%. So your labor that you put in there and everything, electrification or whatever it is, insecticide, pesticide, and all that, you don't, remove all that expenditure from the farm. So what you do is you look from the produce that the farm, you got out of the farm during harvest or after harvest, you pay 10% if it was watered by natural means, and 5% if it was other than that. Now, so this first part has gone, but there are other things that we extract from the earth apart from farm produce. So the next one that we'll be treating, that the Sheikh brought forth, is zakat al-ma'din. Zakat al-ma'din. Zakat on ores. Ores. So what are ores? What are ma'din? وَهُوَ كُلُّ مَا خَرَجَ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ. It is anything that is extracted from the earth, مِمَّا يُخْلَقُ فِيهَا, and this thing is created as, as part of the earth, min ghayriha, but it is not the earth, it is not sand. It is distinct from sand. Anything that Allah created into the earth, but is not sand, mimma lahu qima, and it has value, then it is referred to as ma'adin. It is referred to as ore, O-R-E. Al-hadid, like, iron, wal-yaqut, and sapphire, wal-zabrojad, I'll get the meaning of that, wal-atiq, wa-subh, wa-kahl, wa-kabriyat, this was sulfurs, wa-dhahab, wal-fidda, wa-an-nift, and oil. So different types of metals or ores. Not all of them are metals that are in the earth. You have metals, you have non-metals, you have solid, you have liquid, like a nift. Wa ghayri dhalika mimma yuntabiq alayhi ismu al-ma'din. All of these share the name ores. All of these share the name of ma'din. ولا تخرج زكاته إلا بعد سبكه وتصفيته. We do not pay the zakah on ores until after they have been smelted, if they are metals, or purified by other means, if they are non-metals. So because the zakat is paid on the pure substance, not the impure substance. Because if you weigh it along with the impurities, the weight that you get will not be the weight of the pure substance itself. And that is not what is required. What is required is that you pay the zakah on the pure substance itself. Now, just like when we are paying zakat on gold, if you have gold of different carats, you are to equate it to pure gold and pay zakat based on that. So if you have like 9 carats, if you have like, whatever carat, you are to convert it to pure gold value. What amount of pure gold is in this, and then pay zakat on that. We explained that in details when we were taking that in general. But inshallah, when we get to Athman, we will treat that also. Now, so we pay zakah on it after purifying it. وَالْمَعْدِنْ أَشْبَهُ بِالثِّمَارِ مِنْ غَيْرِهَا. The Sheikh Rahimahullah says that ma'din, ores, are more similar or most similar to farm produce than all other things that they may be compared with. Allahu A'lam, this is one position of the scholars. Allahu A'lam, it may not be the most correct position. It resembles farm produce in the sense that it is extracted, it's something extracted from the earth, but it is different from farm produce in other respects. For instance, it is not something that grows. It's not something that we water or is watered naturally and all that. So there are a lot of differences between it. Perhaps it is more like rikaz, buried treasure, than any other thing from the things that we extract from the earth. Allahu a'lam. Wa zakatuhu rubul ushur. The Sheikh Rahimullah says the zakat to be paid on ores is 2.5%. Rubu al-ushur, or a quarter of 10%. A quarter of a tenth. So that is a quarter of 10%. That's 2.5%. There's difference of opinion among scholars on this. One will arrive at rubul al-ushur if one likens ores to if one likens ores to gold and silver, which are ores in and of themselves. And that is the best analogy to draw from it. Now, we mention analogy because there is no texts or that is authentic that says that we should pay zakah on ores. So the different opinion amongst the scholars, if you have to pay on ores at all or not. Some of the scholars say yes, some of the scholars say no. Out of the scholars that say yes, some say, oh, it is only on solid ores. Some say it is all types of ores that we pay zakah on. So if you're going to do qiyas, analogy on this, then we'll use qiyas on the material that we pay zakat on that is most similar to ores. And the most similar ore most similar ores are ores themselves, gold and silver. So if we compare them to gold and silver, then everything that applies to gold and silver will apply to them too. So if we apply an analogy to connect them to gold and silver, then 2.5% is what we'll pay. But some of the scholars apply the analogy to link them with other things apart from gold and silver. Some relate them to farm produce. So they say one is to pay 10% because one is not irrigating them, but neither are they being irrigated by natural means. They are not in need of irrigation. So that's the weakness in that position. Allahu a'lam. Some of the scholars relate them to ghanima, war booty gathered during time of war. Some relate them to fi-l, booty gotten in a battle, conquest that did not involve battle. The Muslims, went against the kuffar, and the kuffar did not resist. They surrendered. There was no fighting that took place. Then, in this case, it is what the Muslims get is called fi-l, and that goes to the Prophet ﷺ to distribute as he wills. In the case of ghanima, then it will be 1/5 of it, 20%, that will go to Allah and His Prophet, like Allah said in the Quran, Surah Al-Anfal. Allah says, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسُهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. So Allah says, whatever you get as ghanima, booty that you get during mortal combat, that you actually fight, then know that 1/5 of it, 20% of it, is for Allah and His Messenger and the relatives of the Prophet ﷺ, and the orphans and the poor people and the wayfarers. So this 20% goes to that purpose. So for people who liken it to this, for the scholars who liken it to this, then if it is ghanima, then it is 1/5 that they say should be extracted from or should be paid as zakah from the ma'adin, from the ores. Now, wa zakatuhu rubul ushur. إذا كمل النصاب وهذا يشترط له الحول أو لا يشترط. So the scholars also differ with regards to the nisab. Is there nisab for ma'adin or not? We'll get to it shortly. They also differ with respect to how. When one discovers ore, is one to wait one lunar calendar or not before paying the zakah, or you pay it on the spot, like in the case of rikaz, which is buried treasure that was buried during the time of Jahiliyyah and was found by the Muslims. This is rikaz. In the case of rikaz, you pay when you find it. You don't wait for a year. You pay when you find it, because like something that is harvested, you have everything right there and then. So you pay your zakah at that point. Now, ذهب الحنابلة والشافعية والمالكية والأحناف إلى أنه لا يشترط له الحول. The majority of the scholars, including the four popular schools, the Hanbali, the Shafi'i, the Maliki, and the Hanafi, they hold the position that there is no hawl required. And this is the position of the majority of the scholars. However, Imam Ishaq ibn Rahawai and Imam Ibn Mundhir are of the opinion that you should, because they are wealth similar to gold and silver, that you wait for 1 year. Because of the Prophet ﷺ statement where he said, La zakata fi malin hatta yahulu alil hawl. There is no zakat to be paid on wealth until one lunar calendar has passed. However, this wealth, is a general statement that has been qualified by other statements of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning it doesn't mean all wealth. For instance, Allah says with regards to farm produce that we are to give its haqq, وَآتُ حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. You are to pay the haqq, the zakah, on the day that you harvest. So it is not, this excludes farm produce from this hadith. We do not wait for 1 year with respect to farm produce. Also, rikaz, we do not wait for 1 year for rikaz. It's when we discover it. And likewise, in the case of ma'adin, we do not also wait for 1 year, except in the case of the two ma'adins, where the Prophet ﷺ has explained that is gold and silver. In gold and silver, and these two ma'adins that are also currencies, we wait for 1 year. And that is because in the case of currency, there is the possibility of appreciation and depreciation. You can collect more of it, and you can lose part of it or all of it. Whereas in the case of ma'adin, you are getting whatever you're getting at that period of time. It doesn't grow. It doesn't, you don't add to it like in the case of, money, that you can get your salary every, month or something like that, or you trade with it, and each time somebody comes to buy, your wealth increases and things like this. That doesn't apply in the case of ma'adin. So the best way to look at it is in the case of buried treasure. When you find it, that is when you pay the zakah on it. And Allahu a'lam. Now, under the heading of rikaz, ma'adin, on ores, the scholars look at it under a couple of topics. One of it is sifatul ma'adin, alladhi yata'alaqa bihi wujub zakah. What type of ore are you going to pay zakah on? What type of ore is zakatable? It is a type of ore that fits the definition that we gave at the beginning, which is كل ما خرج من الأرض مما يخلق فيها من غيرها مما له قيمة. It is anything that is a part of the earth, but is not sand, and has value. Anything that has value is part of the earth, but is not sand, is zakatable under this. The second topic that the scholars look at when discussing ma'din is what's fi qadri al-wajib wasifatihi. What amount is paid in zakat? What amount is to be paid out of it? And this amount that you extract out of it, what is it called? Do you call it zakah, or do you call it other than zakah? Qadru wajib fihi rubul ushr. For scholars who equate ma'din to the two popular ma'dins that are also currencies, that is gold and silver, they say what you pay is rubul ushr, 2.5%. You pay 2.5%, a quarter of 10%. Wa sifatuhu annahu zakah. And they say that this 2.5% that you are paying is zakah. وهذا قول عمر بن عبد العزيز والمالك وقال Imam Malik and the Khalifa Umar bin Abdul Aziz. This is their position, that it is zakah when you find ore and you pay 2.5% of it. That 2.5% of it is regarded as zakah. Imam Abu Hanifa has a different opinion. He says, al-wajib fihi al-khumus wa huwa fi'. Says that what you are to pay when you find ma'din is 20%, khumus, 1/5. 1/5 is what you are to pay. And that is because it is fi'. It is something that you happened upon without you engaging in battle, in physical, combat. But to regard it as fi', it will have to be, battle that didn't warrant fighting. But it is a battle all the same. So in this case of ma'din, it is not linked to battle in any shape or fashion. And ma'din can be found in the land of Islam, and just as it can be found in the land of non-Muslims. Whereas fi' talks about what is gathered in the land of non-Muslims. So Allahu A'lam, this position of regarding it as fi', and thereby saying that what applies to fi' applies to it, which is 1/5, which is 20%. Allahu A'lam, this position is weak. It's a position of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Wakhtaruhu Abu Ubaid. Imam Abu Ubaid is also of this opinion. وقال الشافعي, Imam al-Shafi'i says that it is zakah, it is not fi'. Just like the majority of the scholars, Imam Shafi'i says that it is zakah, that you pay whatever it is that you're paying on ma'din, on ores, it is zakah. However, his position changes between, is it 2.5% that you are to pay, or is it 20% like Imam Abu Hanifa? And as I said, since it is a thing of analogy, the closest thing that one will attach it to is gold and silver, meaning what you have to pay in zakah is 2.5%. What you have to pay is zakah, because that is what is applicable to gold and silver, and what you have to the amount you have to pay in zakah is 2.5%. The third thing they talk about, after talking about the description of the description of ma'din that you have to pay zakah on, and also talking about what you have to pay, is it zakah or not, and what quantity of it you have to pay, we arrived at 2.5 being the most correct opinion. They also talk about, the scholars also talk about the nisab. Is there a nisab for ma'din or not? Again, if we are likening it to gold and silver, then there is nisab, which is 85 grams for gold and 595 grams for silver. That is 20 mithqal for gold, also 20 dinar, or in the case of silver, 200 dirham, which is 595 grams of gold. Now, so that is if we're likening it to that, which is the most correct opinion, Allahu A'lam. But if one is likening it to rikaz, the likening to rikaz that we did earlier was in the aspect of when to pay. Is it that 1 year will go over it or not? Is it that 1 year will go over it or not? But in all other aspects, it is likened to gold and silver. So with the nisab will also go with the nisab of gold and silver. For those who liken it to rikaz, buried treasure, then they say, like Imam Abu Hanifa, they say that there is no, there's no nisab on it. Just like fi also, whatever you get in the land of the kuffar, since Imam Abu Hanifa likened it to fi also, then there's no nisab for it. But Allah A'lam, since we are likening to gold and silver, as we said, the nisab of gold and silver is what will apply. Now, وَهُوَ مَا يَبْلُغُ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ 20 مِثْقَالٍ. So it is what is equivalent, in likening it to gold and silver, it is what is equivalent to 20 mithqal, which is a weight measure of gold, which is also 20 dinar, of gold. فِضَّةٍ 200 dirham. And in the case of silver, it is 200 dirhams, weight of gold, not dirhams that we're spending now, but dirham as a measure, a weight measure for silver. أو قيمة ذلك من غيرهما. So anything other than gold, if it is gold and silver that you discovered, then once it is more than 85 grams, you pay the nisab, and that is the nisab. Once it is equal or above that in gold, you pay zakat. If it is silver, once it is 595 grams or above, then you pay the zakat, 2.5% on that. Now, so if it is other than that, if it is other than gold and silver, then you equate them to either gold or silver to get the nisab. If the quantity reaches 85 grams of gold or 595 grams of silver, that is the most commonly quoted. However, if the standard is 20 dinar of gold and 200 dirhams of silver. Now, so we've talked about every other thing here practically. So let's go to the next page. So with that, we end the issue on ores. One thing the Sheikh rahimahullah didn't put here, we quickly mention it, is if one finds ore, for instance, in most jurisdictions today, those there are laws governing those things, where in most cases they belong to the government. But there are some cases where the one who discovers it is allowed to keep it if he pays certain amounts to government or something like that. Different laws in different jurisdictions. So if the land is owned by government and what you find on it then is owned by the government. But if the government allows you that if you find ores on your land, on your property, then you pay the government something and you keep that, then that in this case, then what we've talked about will apply. If the government is the one keeping it, then it will also apply. It will be the government that, would pay it in that case. However, with the government paying it, we'll go back to the issues of the shurut of zakah. Milk is one of them, that one person needs to have the ownership of this according to the more correct opinion. The exemptions, like in the case of Mashia, where there can be a communal ownership of something. We talked about the conditions that will be present for that. Have a joint shepherd, a joint place where they sleep, a joint place where they graze and things like this. So these are, the exemptions. Where the exemptions does not apply, then zakat is on the individual. Zakat is on the individual. So if the state owns it, this individual thing does not hold. And in that case, even if the state were to pay, the state will be paying to itself, because it will be the custodian that will now distribute whatever to the recipient of zakah. And Allahu A'lam. The more, correct position is that if the individual is allowed to pay, to own it, then is when the zakah will apply to him. And Allahu A'lam. So inshallah, we'll stop here. Next class, inshallah, we'll take Az-zakaat fi-l-Rikaz. Az-zakaat fi-l-Rikaz. Rikaz are things of value that were buried during the time of Jahiliyyah and were discovered by Muslims. So there's something to pay on that as zakah. What is it? Inshallah, next week we'll get to it. Any question?
None, Ya Sheikh.
Okay. Barakallah. Now. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.